The world of Nirn is full of numerous mysteries, big and small alike, and the land of Skyrim especially has an abundance of strange and enigmatic occurrences, locations, beings, individuals, and objects. As a fellow scholar of Tazokan, Tamriel, I make it my mission to offer possible explanations behind unanswered questions and inexplicable phenomena we come across on our travels through this beautiful continent, as well as other realms such as Aetherius and Oblivion. Today, we will be turning our attention to a smaller mystery, one that we will take a different approach towards. The theories, or rather expansions of what we already know to be offered regarding this weapon, are minuscule compared to others we have closely examined when investigating different oddities, but what is known of said weapon is as interesting as it is vague. I am speaking of the Dragon Priest dagger Kahvozein's Fang. Drem Yol Lok, and welcome to my study here in my home leaf rest in Riverwood, Skyrim. Today we are turning our focus to the enigmatic Kahvozein's Fang, to the scarce known lore behind it and its involvement in a College of Winterhold quest that is given only to those most advanced in alteration magic. Then we will explore a couple of short expansions on the established knowledge behind it and the code that wielded it. Without further ado, let us focus on the inked pieces of parchment where I have documented my research and pay a visit to Tolvdir in the College of Winterhold. Kahvozein's Fang can be found in any ancient Nordic temple where a dragon priest is entombed, meaning its location is radiant. For me, during my current adventures in Skyrim, it appeared in Ragnvald, burial place of Otar the Mad, and Sonak, a priest who was once benevolent and just, but descended into madness. He is also rather unique among his fellow Sonakke in that he is the only priest in Kaizal, Skyrim, whose name is not draconic in origin, and there are quite a few intriguing theories born of this fact. Otar will be the topic of discussion next time. As of now, let us return to Kahvozein's Fang. The blade can also spawn in Forohost, Highgate Ruins, Labyrinthian, also known as Bromunar, Northern Kingdom, Valthum, or Volskig. It looks like any other Dragon Priest dagger we may uncover during our travels, has no enchantments, does as much damage as its ordinary counterpart, and if we choose to sell it, costs only 9 septims. At first sight, there is nothing remarkable about this weapon, aside from its name, but that is not the only unique attribute this dagger possesses. In spite of its lack of obvious magical boosts, it is the only blade in Skyrim sharp enough to cut through a dragon's heart scales, and this will come into play very soon. Beforehand, however, let us focus on what little is left of the history behind the dagger, part of which we will learn from Tolvdir, a teacher in the College of Winterhold. Kahvozein's Fang was wielded by the cult of the Dovahzul, after whom the weapon was titled. Ka means proud or pride in Tamrielic, Vo stands for undo, and Zain is beyond. Thus, Kahvozein would literally translate to pride and do beyond, but I believe a more accurate conveyance of his name would be beyond undoing pride or pride beyond undoing. I doubt the interpretation undoing pride beyond or anything related to undoing one's pride is correct, because if that were the case, while Kahvozein may not have become Parthurnak's number 2, he certainly would not have wanted to have fanatical followers that gifted him with blood sacrifices. Yes, this dagger is legendary across Skyrim, specifically due to giving its possessor the ability to collect the heart scales of a Dova, due to its sharpness, since it was used for religious sacrifices in the name of Kahvozein. Now we are going to travel to the College of Winterhold and meet with Tolvdir to uncover more details about the dagger. After numerous hours of consuming tome after alteration tome and practicing every chance I get, I have finally developed my skill in alteration magic enough to impress the Master Mage.
Liar!
Greetings, sir. I was wondering, is there anything more my cherished companion here and I can learn about alteration magic?
At this very moment? No. However, well, I've been working on something. An improvement on the ebony flesh spell. I've made progress, but then hit a snag. I think perhaps you could help.
What is the problem?
I need dragon scales, and not just any dragon scales. As I've said, I made some progress using the essence of dragon scales, but they're just not quite potent enough. My knowledge of Skyrim's history is far from complete, but I did some research and discovered two things. First, there are ancient references to dragon heart scales. What little I could learn suggests they may be what I need. Second, there are stories of a dagger called Kahvozein's Fang, said to be sharp enough to carve individual scales off a dragon. First, you'll need to retrieve the dagger, then use it to carve a few scales off a dragon. Presumably a deceased one.
We'll return with the dragon scales. Likely not very shortly, for we are otherwise engaged at present, but you will have them.
That would be wonderful. I'll be sure and have everything ready. This is exciting, isn't it?
Before we go, is there anything you can tell us about the dagger, Kahvozein's Fang?
Not much, I'm afraid. It was named Kahvozein's Fang after the dragon worshipped by this particular sect of the cult. They were said to be quite fond of ritual sacrifices. So fond, in fact, that the high priest spent a great deal of time sharpening the dagger. That way, it was always ready for the next inevitable victim. Perhaps not the brightest spot in Skyrim's history, eh?
Vir localus, how lovely. Kahvozein's cultists certainly sound like a charming bunch. Until we meet again, sir.
Until next time.
O Fulni, worry not for the quest of the Exentason. He is not in a hurry and it is not our focus. Now let us enjoy Fal Bri, the beauty of nature, and relax in my home leaf rest as we go over all we know and briefly expand on some of the information we have gathered. Let us begin. Mora now Minda. It would seem what we discussed so far is all we can find about Kahvozein's cult and the dagger. I searched every book related to the dragon cult, Skyrim, and the Merithic era, and besides what we have covered thus far and what Dovahzul shared with us, nothing else is established. To summarize, Kahvozein's cultists were very fond of their blood sacrifices for their Dovra, their dragon god. Thus, the high priest spent a lot of time sharpening the weapon to ensure it would be ready for its next victim. What I find quite intriguing is that the Fang is supposedly legendary in Skyrim, yet nobody seems to speak of it or even briefly mention it, aside from Dovahzul. I suppose it fell into obscurity, much like most of the history concerning the dragon cult, and never resurfaced. It is little wonder, given how dark what we know of Kahvozein's followers and their creation is. People were likely happy to forget most of the despicable deeds the sect committed. I also read through all of the word walls we can come across during our travels in Kaizal, and not a single one mentions Kahvozein, his cult, or a weapon even vaguely resembling the Fang. Opening a bracket here, the word walls are an extremely unexplored topic and are shrouded in considerable mystery. This is a research I shall definitely undertake in the foreseeable future, and one I'm most excited to embark on, closing the bracket. Nurigirwa isk do Kahvozein. Now let us return to Kahvozein's Fang. As I mentioned at the beginning, any expansions of what little we know of this dagger are rather short, and I am uncertain if I could even call them theories. The first we can come up with is that Kahvozein's Fang was, in actuality, Kahvozein's Fang. Upon closer inspection on Dovahzul's teeth, not a sentence I ever thought I'd utter, the shape of Dragon Priest daggers does resemble them. The color, not so much most of the time. It is quite possible that some of them were indeed gifted by Dove to their followers to reshape into weapons with the help of metals or even magic. Here I am reminded of our beloved Pag Thurnax's missing horn. Only one example of his overall battered appearance, which I focused on months ago, but the most striking one due to its resemblance to the horn of Jürgen Windcaller. Many Dovahkiines suspect Nax parted with a fragment of this Dul, natural crown of his willingly, as a sign of good faith between him and Jürgen Windcaller. And it is quite possible, given that Nax adopted the ancient Norse philosophy of the way of the voice, perhaps even learned how to apply it directly from the source himself. Another thing to consider is that if we choose to return the horn back to Ustengrav, we are gifted with the knowledge of a Dova, a dragon's soul. But I digress. Given Dovah's expanded arcane abilities, I doubt they would be incapable of regrowing a tooth, so why would they not part with one to give to their highest ranking priest? Besides, interestingly enough, it is ultimately unclear what material Dragon Priest daggers are made of. They can be upgraded if one has the unofficial, emphasis on the unofficial, hatch installed, with the help of a dwarven metal ingot. I believe those who added this feature chose dwarven metal to be what can upgrade Dragon Priest daggers merely because it resembles the material of the blades themselves and due to its durability would upgrade the blades better than corundum, which also has a likeness to Dragon Priest daggers. I will not discuss amber, for this material was added much later on. In any case, it is important to note that in the vanilla game, these daggers are among the few weapons that cannot be upgraded at all. The only logical explanation as to why would be that the material used to craft them is not easy to come across. And while there are many Dovahzul buried in Skyrim, nobody has thought to dig their remains out and craft dragonbone armor and weapons from them, let alone check their teeth and mold them into daggers. Or if some have gotten this idea, they were probably just not capable of crafting weapons and armor from the materials. But perhaps we delved a little too deeply into the material behind Dragon Priest daggers and thus Kahvozein's Fang. Whether or not the blade in question and its ordinary counterparts are crafted from dove's teeth is left to our imagination. The priests could have used an unknown to us metal as well. Let us return to Kahvozein's cult and other assumptions we can make based on what scarce information on it we have at our disposal. One is that other dragons were among the blood sacrifices in the name of the Dova, leading the sect. The fact that the Fang is the only known weapon sharp enough to cut through dragon heart scales could imply that Kahvozein's followers gifted their Dovra with an unfortunate Zema, brother of his or two from time to time, as a sacrifice, not Anyway, in spite of all Dovahzul being Kire, children of Akatosh, some are weaker than others, just as some are younger than others. As Arngir informs us, Dovahzul easily absorb the power and knowledge of another of their kind.
Dragons have the inborn ability to learn and project their voice. Dragons also are able to absorb the power of their slain brethren.
This way, Kahvozein, whose pride is beyond undoing, would become more and more formidable with each Dovahzul, dragon soul he devours. And perhaps he would reward his followers generously for their obedience and devotion, either by gifting them with Suliek, power, or Minda, knowledge. And this is all we can uncover and theorize regarding Kahvozein's Fang and the cult of the eponymous Dova. We cannot determine which, if any, of the dragon priests we face were members of this sect, for the location of the blade is radiant. We know nothing of the Dovra in question except for his name. He is not mentioned in any texts about the dragon cult, Skyrim's history, or the Merithikira in general. And these two speculations, purely based on what we know of the dagger, are all we can offer as expansions of the scarce established information we have. Thus, our short research comes to an end. The dragon cult and all of its elements are endlessly intriguing to me, as well as to many other adventurers and scholars of Tamriel. Unfortunately, what we can find out about it is rather vague and oftentimes shrouded in mystery, thicker than Alduin's mist in Sovngarde. Kahvozein's cult and the weapon they used for ritualistic sacrifices is but a small fragment of the rich history of Findovrahe Arknist Sonake, of the dragon gods and their priests, which has been lost to time. I do hope you enjoyed this rather short research, which is different to the longer ones we usually embark on, and if you have additional information on Kahvozein's Fang and or sources and details and even theories I may have missed myself, please do not hesitate to share. I always adore exchanging thoughts and knowledge with you, Difadonne. Arkun Sluhat Kogan, thank you so much for your support as always. I look forward to having you here again. But until then, Lok Thu'um. May you push the world harder than it pushes back, Difadonne.